Okay, so a very quick review of what we did in the first video was we went to File and Settings and we connected our PyCharm to our GitHub account, right? So we first had to create a GitHub account, then we had to connect it to the GitHub account through File Settings and Version Control. We then created a repository on GitHub, and we did that by going to the root of our GitHub account, and we clicked on repositories and we clicked new, and we created this homework 5 Spring 22 repository. The final thing that we did was to commit and upload our homework 5 directory. So we did that by right-clicking, and I believe we went to Git, and I think we had the option to commit directory, and we did that, and then once all those commits had showed up here, we right-clicked on this and we said push all of this up to here into the repository. And so we pushed, and that was that. All right, so now we've got a backup copy of all our work on GitHub. I'm going to go ahead and open up this repository, and we see that all of these have a comment associated with them. This is the initial commit of the homework 5 directory. All right, well now I want to start working on my homework 5A stem. So I'm going to go back to my local repository on PyCharm, and I'm going to, let's see, I think what I'll do is create a branch off of the origin branch and start working on part A inside that branch. Okay, so let's figure out how do we create a branch. So I have over here, so I'm under the Git tab in my PyCharm, and I see that I've got my local, which is tied to the master branch. I want to create a side branch of this so I can work on homework 5A. So I'll call this branch homework 5. Let's just call it underscore part A. I kind of like the underscore thing, so I'll go ahead and do this. I'll say create, and now I've created a branch from my master branch called part A. All right, so what I'm going to do is use all of my work in part A under this branch. We'll make the changes and then we'll merge it back with the original branch of this GitHub tree. All right, so I want to, let's see, I want to make a copy of 5A stem, and I'm going to paste it back into the same directory but with a new name. So the new name I'm going to give it is work. So this just creates a copy of this file, and it says, do I want to add this to my Git? Yeah, so Git is the, remember, the hidden directory under that local directory that allows me to keep track of version. And I'm going to say, yeah, do that. And I don't want it to really ask me this again. I want it to automatically go ahead and include these new files in version control. Okay. I'm going to pause just a second because I saw something weird here. Okay, it wasn't weird. I just wondered why this was green instead of red, but it seems like it's okay. All right, so I've created a copy of stem. I've called it work, and I've created a new branch called part A. This is all done locally, of course. Nothing has been pushed onto the internet. So I'm going to go down here to this local branch. I'm going to right-click on this, and I'm going to say push. This will, on the GitHub cloud, create a new branch called homework 5 part A, and I'll go ahead and push that. We can check by going to our web browser that we've in fact created this remote branch. So let's see, I want to refresh this window, and we should be able to click here under master and go to homework 5 part A. And I see that all I've really done is copied all of the files from my initial master push into a branch called 5A. You'll notice that the file I created, homework A work, does not appear here. While I pushed a new branch into the GitHub cloud, I did not push this new file that I created locally called work. So the sequence of events that needs to happen is that I first of all need to commit this new file to my local branch and then push that off to the internet to make sure that it gets recorded on the internet. So I'll right click here and go down to Git and say commit file. Okay, so now I get to type some kind of comment about this, and I'll say, is the work I'm doing on part A. And I'll go ahead and say commit. I'm going to actually say commit and push, and it should then bring up the push window, and it says, okay, I'm going to commit that file, part A. If I go back to GitHub, I see now if I refresh this, that file called homework A 5A work shows up, and I get the comment that I just included here. So currently I've made no changes between homework A stem and homework A work. There's been no actual work done in the file, so these two files are exactly the same. All I've been doing now is creating a branch on where I can do my changes to this file. All right, well let's make some changes and see what happens. Okay, so I can go back here to my project directory. I see the local directory tree and the file on which I'm currently working. I've called homework 5 spring 22A work. All right, well, so this is the one where we're creating the Moody chart, where we're calculating friction factors either based on this simple linear relationship in the laminar region or using the Colburn equation if we're in the turbulent regime. So I've trimmed out some code here, but I'm going to go ahead and type in some stuff just so we can make some changes. I'm going to bring up my Word document so I can remind myself of the Colebrook equation. I don't have that one committed to memory, so I have to bring this up. Let's see. I'm going to create a variable for the left-hand side of this equation, and a variable for the right-hand side of this equation. Okay, so let's see. Let's do the left-hand side. I'm going to say the left-hand side is equal to 1 over the friction factor raised to the 0.5 power, or the square root of the friction factor. On the right-hand side, which I'll just call RHS, I've got this equal to minus, I'm going to bring this back up, was it minus 20? No, sorry, minus 2 times the log. So let's see, minus 2.0 times the log of that stuff in parentheses. I'm going to use the numpy.log10, because we're doing a log base 10, the stuff that's inside the parentheses. So the stuff that's inside the parentheses was the relative roughness over 3.7. I'm using RR for the relative roughness, 3.7. And then we had a second fraction in here, which was 2.51 over the Reynolds number times the square root of the friction factor. So let's see, 2.51 over the Reynolds number times the friction factor raised to the 0.5 power. All right, well that's the left-hand side and the right-hand side of the Colebrook equation. Now, this of course is not working code yet. I've got lots of errors in the code, but I did go to the trouble to type in these two equations. So I'm going to go ahead and commit this to my local repository and then upload it to GitHub with a push. So I'll notice that when I made these changes, it changed the coloring of this file name over here to indicate that the changes have been made, but I haven't committed these to GitHub yet. So I'm going to go down to Git and commit file, and so I can make a comment. For the Colebrook equation. can say go ahead and commit and push this. So I want to push this over to my GitHub, and that happens. So if I go to GitHub, I can now come here and refresh the repository, and I can see that that change that I just made for the Colebrook equation was included. All right, so let's see here. If I click on this, it gives me the changes that were made since the last push to my repository. So this is really handy. Right, so the way I got there was I'm in my repository, homework 5, spring 22. I pushed the changes that I made locally to my branch. So my branch that I was working on was homework 5, part A, right, where I've got the homework 5, part A underscore work file. I'm not changing the stem, I'm just working on this one. And I've made a couple of changes to this. The initial commit didn't change anything, and then when I committed this this one with the comment that says I wrote the left-hand side and right-hand side for the Colebrook equation, I can simply click on this, and it brings up a little window here that shows me the highlight of changes that were made since the previous commit. And so we see that in the original file, line 17 had this comment, the JES missing code here. I've now changed line 17 to be this and line 18 to be this. So it shows me the difference that exists between the previous commit and this commit. Well, this is handy because if I've made an error somewhere, then I know where the error occurred and at what point along the way it occurred. So let's see. If I thought that wasn't a good change, the question is, can I go back to the previous version? And that's what we're going to explore next. I'll do that in the next file.